Okay, picture this. It's the evening of November 12th, 1996. High above Delhi, you've got two absolute giants hurtling through the sky. I mean, these planes are packed with people, and every single person on board is trusting just one thing to keep them safe. That single voice on the radio.
And here's the thing. Up there, in the haze and the clouds of the evening sky, the pilots literally couldn't see a thing. The two planes never saw each other. Their whole world, their very safety, it all came down to following instructions from a controller they couldn't see, guiding them through a sky they were flying blind in.
One of them is climbing, the other is descending, and there's just 1,000 feet separating them. Now, 1,000 feet in aviation, that's supposed to be a safe buffer. But let's be real, it is a razor-thin margin for error. It's a tiny gap that, in just a few seconds, is about to close forever.
So, that leads to the big question, right? How on earth did this happen? How did the deadliest midair crash in history unfold? You've got two modern planes, both talking to the same controller. How do they end up on a collision course? Well, that's exactly what we're going to unpack. This is the story of the Charkhi Dadri disaster.
Okay, so let's talk about who was on these planes, because this is where the human story really hits home. You had two very different aircraft. On one hand, a rugged, Russian-built Ilyushin IL-76 carrying 37 people, mostly merchants from Kyrgyzstan heading to Delhi to buy textiles. And on the other, you've got this massive Boeing 747 Saudi Flight 763 packed with 312 Indian laborers flying to the Gulf for work. So you see, totally different planes, different backgrounds, but the same dream. Everyone was just trying to build a better life for their family. Two flights, one terrible, shared fate.
So, to understand how this could happen, you have to look at the system itself. And back in 1996, Delhi's skies, well, they were a bit of an anomaly. See, most big airports have separate lanes for planes coming in and planes going out, like a highway. But Delhi didn't. Because of military airspace, all commercial flights, arrivals, and departures were crammed into one single, narrow corridor. It was a one-lane highway in the sky, and it was getting more and more crowded.
And the technology guiding them through this single highway? Well, it was dangerously outdated. We're talking about primary radar. All the air traffic controller could see was a glowing dot for each aircraft. That's it. No altitude, no speed, no info on who was who. He was basically flying blind when it came to their altitude. Think about that. He's managing a 3D problem with only 2D information.
And this really shows you the difference. What the controller in Delhi saw in 1996 was just a glowing dot. No altitude, no warnings, nothing. Compare that to modern radar, which gives you the whole story, full flight data, precise altitude, and most importantly, collision alerts. Back then, there was no technological safety net. The only thing preventing a disaster was perfect human communication.
And that one human at the center of it all, controller VK Dutta, was having a really, really busy night. I mean, he was juggling 5 planes at once. That's more than double the typical workload for a controller. You had the Kazakh plane coming in, the Saudi 747 going out, 2 other domestic flights, and a U.S. Air Force plane, all talking to him, all needing his attention, all at the same time.
So the controller's plan was actually really simple. It was textbook stuff. He told the outbound Saudi jet to climb to 14,000 feet, and he told the inbound Kazakh plane to descend to 15,000 feet. The idea was to keep them vertically separated by 1,000 feet as they crossed paths. It's a plan that works every single day, if everyone follows their instructions perfectly.
All right, so after the crash, the investigation kicks into high gear. Day 1, they secure the site and find the first big clue. The Kazakh plane's tail is found right at the beginning of the massive wreckage field. By day 3, the controller VK Dutta is cleared. His instructions were perfect. Within a week, they find the black boxes and send them off to Moscow and London for analysis. But when the data comes back in week 2, well, it just makes things even more confusing.
So here was the big question for investigators. The tail was hit first, right? The Kazakh IL-76 has this very high T-tail. So for the Saudi 747 to hit it, the Kazakh plane had to be below it. But wait, they were supposed to be 1,000 feet above it. So, who made the mistake? Did the Kazakhs descend way too far? Or did the Saudis climb way too high?
And when the flight data recorders gave up their secrets, the mystery just deepened. The data from the Saudi 747, it was perfect. A smooth, professional climb, leveling off at exactly 14,108 feet, right where they were told. But the Kazakh recorder, it showed this bizarre, jagged staircase descent. They'd hold an altitude, then drop, hold, then drop again. It was erratic and just weird. Investigators were completely baffled.
The answer, it turned out, was inside the Kazakh cockpit. It was a recipe for disaster, a total pressure cooker of confusion. You had three huge barriers. First, the language barrier. ATC is in English, but the pilots only spoke Russian. Second, the unit barrier. ATC gives altitude in feet, but the pilot's main instrument was in meters. And third, the crew barrier. With 5 people in the cockpit, instructions were passed along like a game of Russian whispers, getting distorted along the way.
And all that confusion led to one single crucial error. The radio operator told air traffic control that they had reached their assigned altitude of 15,000 feet. The problem was, they hadn't. They were actually at 16,400 feet, and they were still descending. So the controller, hearing this completely wrong information, thought they were safe and cleared them to continue.
And this is what you hear on the cockpit voice recorder. The chilling final words. The radio operator suddenly screams, "Get to 150, because on the 140, that one." He realizes in that split second what's happening. He's yelling at the pilot to get back up to 15,000 feet because he's just spotted the other plane at 14,000. But it's too late.
So, what was the official cause? The final report concluded it was a tragic misinterpretation. The theory is that the Kazakh pilot heard the controller say the other plane was at 14,000, and he misunderstood that as a new instruction to descend to that altitude. As for that strange staircase pattern on the flight data, well, the official report basically shrugged its shoulders and dismissed it as a faulty sensor.
But out of this terrible tragedy came real, life-saving change. The legacy of Charkhi Dadri is safer skies for all of us. First, a system called TCAS, which automatically warns pilots if they're too close to another plane, was made mandatory in India. Second, new global rules were put in place requiring all pilots and controllers to be proficient in English. And finally, in Delhi, they got rid of that single highway in the sky and built separate corridors for arrivals and departures.
349. That's the number of people who died that night. 349 souls. Every single person on both planes. It remains the deadliest mid-air collision in history. But maybe the most haunting part of this whole story is that for some families, there was no closure. Because of the sheer devastation of the crash, many of the victims were never identified. So just think about that. For those families, a loved one simply went away to find a better life, and they never came back. They just vanished.